The rain had just stopped when Ibrahim Traoré's presidential jet landed on the isolated runway near Pyongyang. It was a quiet arrival, far from the cameras and political analysts who usually tracked his every step. This visit was not about handshakes for the press. It was about unfiltered talks with one of the world's most unpredictable leaders, Kim Jong-Un. Inside the armored limousine that picked him up, Traoré stared through the tinted window, watching the mist curl around the ancient pines lining the narrow road. His security aide, Colonel Sanu, shifted uncomfortably beside him. "Mr. President, the world will not like this," Sanu murmured. Traoré didn't answer immediately. He leaned his head back and closed his eyes. The man who had once stared down Western sanctions and survived assassination plots knew that some truths could only be spoken where no one was listening. At the gates of the Kumsusan Palace of the Sun, a tight cluster of North Korean officers snapped to attention. When Traoré stepped out, Kim Jong-un was already there, his trademark half-smile firmly in place. "Welcome to my country, President Traoré," Kim said in perfect English, extending his hand. Traoré shook it, his grip steady. "I didn't come for your scenery, Supreme Leader. Let's get to the point." Kim laughed softly, gesturing for him to follow inside the marble corridors. "Straight to business, that's why I respect you." Inside the grand but eerily silent chamber, two leaders from opposite ends of the world prepared to discuss what neither the West nor their closest advisors would expect: gold, weapons, energy independence, and the real question: could Africa and North Korea share secrets powerful enough to bend global politics? As the heavy doors shut behind them, Traoré felt the weight of millions back home and the watchful eyes of rival powers. But for now, it was just him and Kim. No filters, no translators, no excuses. Tonight, secrets would either bind them or destroy everything. The massive doors of the private negotiation chamber closed with a deep echo, sealing Ibrahim Traoré and Kim Jong-un away from the small army of aides and guards waiting outside. A long, polished table stood between them, but both leaders ignored the formal seats and instead stood by the panoramic window that overlooked the palace gardens, shrouded in mist. Kim poured 2 cups of steaming ginseng tea himself, a symbolic gesture of trust, or perhaps a test. Traoré accepted the cup, but didn't drink. Instead, he fixed his eyes on Kim's, unblinking. "Why now, Kim? Why invite an African leader when you could bargain with China or Russia more easily?" Traoré asked, his voice calm but carrying an edge. Kim's lips curled into a smirk. "Because, President Traoré, they underestimate you. They underestimate Africa. The West sees my country as isolated, your continent as divided, but both of us know, behind closed doors, we can write a new story." Traoré nodded slightly. "Stories don't feed my people, Supreme Leader. I'm here for energy, for infrastructure that can't be cut off by sanctions. And you want—" Kim's laughter cut through the quiet room. "I want what every cornered animal wants: room to breathe. You have raw minerals, I have the scientists. Maybe together we build what they fear the most: independence." For a moment the two men stood in silence, sipping tea, their reflections blending in the glass before them. Beyond the window, the guards and advisors waited, their whispers muffled by thick walls. Traoré finally spoke again, softly but firmly. "If I walk out of here with empty words, my people suffer for my pride. If I walk out with real deals, I risk the wrath of old empires. So tell me, Kim, are you just playing the rebel again, or are you ready to build something that lasts?" Kim turned, his expression serious for the first time. "I didn't bring you here to waste your time, Traoré. Tonight we start what they will never see coming." Outside, the palace lights glowed like watchful eyes in the dusk, while inside, two unlikely allies began mapping out a plan that could redraw alliances far beyond the walls that hid them. A quiet knock broke the tension in the chamber. A young North Korean aide, pale and clearly nervous, slipped inside to place a sealed dossier on the table between the two presidents. He bowed so deeply his forehead nearly touched the floor, then vanished without a word. Traoré picked up the file slowly. The North Korean seal cracked under his thumb. Inside were blueprints, rail networks, power plants, deep-sea port expansions, all sketched with an engineer's precision and annotated in both Korean and French. Kim leaned closer, lowering his voice. "These are the pieces. You have the iron ore, the rare earth minerals. I have the factories, the manpower, the scientists who can work without foreign interference." Traoré flipped through the pages, each one more daring than the last. Nuclear energy plants for peaceful electricity, a fiber optic corridor connecting Pyongyang to Ouagadougou, even covert security training exchanges that would make both leaders less dependent on old power brokers. "Your plan is ambitious," Traoré said at last. "But ambition can drown a man faster than failure. I don't intend to be remembered as the fool who gambled my people's future on secret handshakes." Kim clasped his hands behind his back, pacing slowly along the window. "You're not a fool, President Traoré. Neither am I. The West wants us hungry and begging for scraps while they sell us back our own wealth at 10 times the price. What I offer is not risk-free, but it's freedom from that cycle." For a heartbeat, only the hum of hidden security cameras filled the room. Traoré closed the dossier, fixing his steady gaze on Kim. "If I agree to this, there's no turning back. We'll be called dictators, rebels, threats to global stability. Sanctions will rain down." Kim's grin returned, colder than before. "Let them come. I have survived a lifetime of sanctions, can you?" Traoré didn't flinch. "I didn't come here to survive. I came here to win." Outside, the night wind stirred the flags of two nations not yet allies, but no longer strangers. As inside, their leaders leaned in, ready to draft a pact that could fracture old empires if it ever saw daylight. Traoré's security chief knocked twice before poking his head in, eyes flicking warily at the North Korean guards posted along the hallway. "Mr. President, the final draft is ready. It's in the adjoining chamber, awaiting your signatures." Kim Jong-Un nodded slightly to his interpreter, who relayed the message in flawless French. Kim and Traoré stood simultaneously, two men from different worlds, bound for the moment by a single vision: escape from foreign leverage. As they walked side by side toward the signing room, a faint echo of their footsteps bounced off the marble walls, which were decorated with propaganda murals praising the Houché spirit. Traoré took in every detail, storing it like ammunition for the battles to come once word of this meeting leaked. Inside the signing room, a polished oak table gleamed beneath harsh overhead lights. On it rested two identical copies of the agreement, written in Korean and French, detailing a covert trade route, technology exchange, and a joint fund for developing African infrastructure without needing Western banks. A senior North Korean official stepped forward with an ornate ink brush. Kim took it first, his round face unreadable as he signed with quick, confident strokes. Then he passed it to Traoré. Traoré paused, the brush hovering over the paper. He could hear the quiet whir of a hidden camera recording every move. He imagined how Washington, Paris, and Seoul would react when, not if, this alliance was discovered. The backlash would be fierce, the accusations of betrayal louder than ever. Yet for a fleeting second, he remembered the villages in Burkina Faso with no lights after sunset, children studying by candlelight while their country's gold-fed foreign vaults. His resolve hardened. He pressed the brush firmly, signing his name with deliberate care. When he finished, he set the brush down and locked eyes with Kim. "May this not be our weakness," Traoré said evenly, "but the first stone we throw at an old wall that needs to crumble." Kim's smile flickered at the corner of his mouth. "Then let the world watch it fall." A single handshake sealed what decades of diplomatic double-talk could not. And somewhere deep in Pyongyang's underground archives, a hidden camera kept rolling, capturing a secret that, if ever leaked, could redraw the lines of power across two continents. Outside the chamber, North Korean officials and Burkinabe aides exchanged tense nods. They all knew this alliance was risky, but both leaders believed it was necessary. A grand dinner was arranged to mark the signing. Long tables filled with Korean delicacies and traditional Burkinabe dishes lined the hall. Traoré raised a glass of rice wine. Kim lifted his, too. "For independence," Traoré toasted. "For resistance," Kim replied. They ate slowly, exchanging small talk about family, childhood, and the burdens of leadership. For a moment, they were just two men fighting giants in suits thousands of miles away. Later, Kim leaned in, voice low. "If they find out about this deal, sanctions will tighten. Your people will suffer." Traoré looked around at his silent team. "Better we suffer fighting than live begging. Africa's story must change, even if the cost is high." In that moment, the bond was sealed not just by ink on paper, but by shared defiance against the world order. After the dinner, they moved to a secluded private lounge hidden deep inside the compound. Here, only their closest advisors were permitted to listen, and even they kept their eyes low, pretending not to hear every word. Kim Jong-Un poured strong soju into small cups, pushing one towards Traoré. "You want weapons, energy, and tech. I want minerals and a trusted friend in Africa. Do we understand each other, President Traoré?" Traoré didn't flinch. "We understand each other perfectly, but understand this too. No foreign flag will ever stand above our land. We trade, we share, but we remain free." Kim studied him carefully, then laughed. "Good. You're the first African leader to say that to my face. I respect it." Maps and sealed folders covered the small table. Joint mining ventures, covert shipping routes, encrypted satellite channels for discreet communication, all laid out like pieces of a dangerous puzzle. As dawn approached, the two men stood and clasped hands firmly. No cameras, no press, just a silent agreement that the next headlines would be written by them, not their enemies. By the early morning, Traoré's chief aide discreetly handed him an encrypted tablet. On its screen, flickered draft terms. North Korean engineers would assist in building small-scale weapons factories deep in Burkina Faso's countryside, far from any satellite surveillance. In return, North Korea would gain exclusive contracts for rare minerals and the right to discreetly test certain technologies under African skies. Kim Jong-un leaned back, observing Traoré's reaction. "This is how empires are built, Ibrahim. Quietly, with iron and loyalty." Traoré's voice stayed calm, but his eyes hardened. "This is how Africa's chains are broken, but I won't trade old masters for new ones. If this partnership threatens our people's freedom, I will bury it myself." A heavy silence settled between the two leaders. Then Kim smiled, almost approvingly. "You may be more dangerous than I thought." Mr. President outside, armed guards stood in perfect formation under the North Korean dawn. Inside, two unpredictable leaders sealed an agreement no one would believe, and no one could stop. As dusk settled over Pyongyang, the final round of talks moved into Kim's private dining chamber. A dark, lacquered room lined with portraits of past leaders. Small bowls of traditional dishes were served in tense silence until Kim raised his glass. "To new understandings between East and Africa," he toasted. Traoré clinked glasses without smiling. Kim leaned forward, voice low. "Your independence talk is admirable, but the West will never let you stand alone. With my factories and your mines, we both survive their sanctions." Traoré met his gaze steadily. "Burkina Faso wants partners, not masters. We build factories on our terms. No secret bases, no hidden weapons that could make us a target." Kim's grin faded slightly, replaced by a calculating nod. "Then we build your factories together, but if America interferes, you will have my protection." A tense truce was forming, one dinner at a time. Outside the closed doors, neither ally nor enemy could guess that two of the world's most watched leaders were rewriting the balance of power, one quiet promise at a time. Back in his secure guest villa, Traoré reviewed the final draft of the Industrial and Cultural Partnership Accord Kim's aides had prepared. It promised funding for railways, new steel plants, and satellite technology, but every line demanded strict secrecy. His security chief, Diallo, whispered urgently, "Mr. President, with this North Korea gains legal access to our ports. If they move weapons under cover of trade, you will be blamed." Traoré's jaw tightened. He returned to the main hall where Kim sat waiting, a sly smile on his face. With deliberate calm, Traoré set the paper down and slid it back. "We will trade, we will build factories, but no weapons, no secret cargo, and no deals that turn Burkina Faso into someone's smuggling route." Kim tapped his fingers, irritation flickering in his eyes before he laughed. "President Traoré, you are tougher than the generals in Washington think. Good. Then we build your way. For now." Outside, snowfall dusted the ancient palaces, hiding the fact that two defiant leaders had just drawn invisible lines that would force both friends and enemies to choose sides in the shadows. As dawn broke over Pyongyang, Traoré stood beside Kim Jong-Un on a marble balcony, facing a sea of North Korean honor guards. Cameras flashed, and state media announced an unbreakable friendship. Yet only the two leaders knew what had truly been promised. In their final private moment, Kim leaned closer. "Your people will expect results quickly, Traoré. If the West squeezes you harder, remember, my ships can bring more than steel." Traoré met his gaze unblinking. "And my people will know who their friends are, Kim. But we stand alone first. Africa must not become a pawn again." They exchanged a stiff handshake for the cameras, but the air crackled with unspoken tension. Kim smiled for the crowd, but his mind raced, already calculating how to test this stubborn African leader's resolve. As Traoré's motorcade rolled toward the airport, he glanced back at the marble palace disappearing into the winter mist. Behind closed doors he had won time, but in Africa's long fight for true independence, time was never free. Ladies and gentlemen, what you've just witnessed is not just a meeting between two powerful leaders, but a quiet clash of ambitions, cultures, and the stubborn hope for a future free from foreign strings. In the marble halls of Pyongyang, Ibrahim Traoré didn't just negotiate aid or steel. He defended Africa's right to chart its own path, even when the price is standing alone. This story reminds us that in the corridors of power, deals are signed with smiles, but sealed with secrets. And yet, no matter how many closed doors or whispered promises, the truth always finds its way back to the people. Keep watching, keep questioning, and never forget, real power doesn't fear isolation. It builds nations that no empire can buy. Stay tuned for more untold moments from the front lines of Africa's fight for dignity. Until next time, stay sharp, stay free.